Thinking in terms of the next 5 minutes is a wonderful, practical thing to do. If you look at your life as just the next 5 minutes, and not 1 minute more, and nothing from the past. It's just here and now. And yet, once you get past 5 minutes, don't look at your clock, just keep adding 5 minutes on to the next one. Then you see that it's not usually a lot of life in the lives of those most charmed people to walk in this charmed place in a charmed way. But this 5 minutes is charming, and the next 5 minutes, and on and on and on and on. I wouldn't say it's amusing to watch other people try to figure other people out and trying to figure out oneself in terms of descriptors. People try to figure you out and you try to figure yourself out, and boxes get filled. Oh, well, you can do this well then, and you've been doing this, so then you're that type of lazy way of categorizing ourselves. Ultimately, we categorize ourselves on the basis of sometimes what others tend to say about us, and then we have to think, how insightful are the people around us? How capable are they of seeing beyond the little boxes? And so we can get into that lazy habit of mind, again, putting ourselves in these different, well, if I'm this, then I'm this. Then I did this, so I'm that. And yet life changes. Also, your attitude towards life changes. You may have thought this and done that, and instead of coming to the conclusion you would have logically expected, you came to a completely different conclusion. Also about so-called valuable things. This is a valuable thing. This is not a valuable thing. How about being bored? Having time. I'm bored. I want to do something. When later you're not bored and you don't want to do something. What's the point of doing something when the point of existing is existing? Yet we're always running back and forth and here and there, right past existence. We're existing in a state that is subconscious, living in a frantic race of causality, and often unskillfully so. Well, how many years were defined by low worries? How many years were defined by, well, if I do this, then that, then this thing, but I'm not quite there yet, so let me keep doing this and that. Let me make sure I just do this one thing to the exclusion of everything else, because that's the important thing, so you think at the time, and looking back, what a folly it was. Folly. Complicated. uh, enervating folly. And yet, if you learn to take yourself not so seriously, you can see the humor in it after all of it thins out a little bit. You thin the tar out with some acetone. It becomes a lot more fluid. You can do useful things with it. Even if it's painting a plank of wood to make it more weather resistant. And when you have a bunch of planks like that over your head and it rains or snows, keeps the water off your head when it drips, 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 till it freezes into icicles. But we have these labels, not just little boxes. How about the label poet? Who understands what a poet is, or who would say, oh, you know what you are? You're a poet. That's it. Who are the people that know what that label means and who can rightfully apply it, and is it true? And even if it were true, what if it's not the defining thing? Just because it's convenient for others to put you in a special high place instead of a low one. You're a fool. Instead, what poet wasn't a fool to most people, even if they were the best of poets? And so what does the poet know about being a poet? When do we come into this concept of criminality? Like, what does criminality really mean? Especially the more nuanced varieties of it. For example, the undeclared or illicit varieties of it. Stuff that's technically not illegal, or maybe it is illegal, but it's also not overt. For example, you have a legal document, but the company that the legal document is associated with is not really a real company. So when you go to court to try to enforce the legality of your legal document, which might also be in your favor, which means you'll be correct, if a court gives you a judgment, which will also cost time and money. But the company that is to pay the debt doesn't have any assets in its name. It was just a shell. And then you would be dealing with a criminal prosecution, but to conduct a criminal prosecution, that also takes a lot of time and money and a lot of aggravation. And now if you're living in a place of the world where you have a court that works in both the criminal and in the legal, how would you put it? It's not criminal, it's, let's say, business, associated business laws. You can count yourself very, 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 very lucky. But that's not a given in these days. It's just not. Like, the further you get away from the inception of a country, and even during the inception of a country, I'm sure there was a lot of people looking for jobs and flim-flams in a world that they felt had flim-flammed them. They decided to flim-flam back. You see, at some point, people can come up with all different types of theories. But the easiest theory to come up with is that you're never wrong. Whatever you do, you're right. And you think that you allow yourself to be persuaded by certain arguments, but because you know everything anyway, or the most important things, you discount what other people say because you see it in terms of a vulgar game, like a grab for something. And then you just start projecting those values on all the people that you deal with. When the people you're dealing with aren't thinking that way, imagine you're dealing with a super normal person. They're not thinking like that at all. You know what they would do in your position. Like, oh, this is just pure poisoned projection on your part. It's, again, shadoic projection is what I say. Now, that as horrible as that is, the good news is you can reverse engineer that process. You don't have to engage in it. It's not the winning strategy. Even if you get things, you lose. It's the way you get things that matters. And if you get things, getting things, think of it as weight. You get something, it's more weight. You get a lot of things, you're weighted down with the things you think you own. Oh, I have this contract. I have a notary who signed off on it. It must be mine. Well, no, there's just so many different degrees of ownership. And if someone is doing something that is not technically illegal but doesn't help you at all and they don't care, you can get into all different types of variations of that. Now, I don't want to doom and gloom people. Those are the worst factors. A lot of times things don't go that wrong. But if you're looking to accumulate wealth, you can get into places like that pretty easily because there's a lot of flim-flammery in business. And because there's a lot of flim-flammery in business, there's also a lot of flim-flammery in the legal professions, in the courts, court officers. And then there's, what else is there? Well, again, politicians, they're supposed to be the conduit for collective resources. Their shtick is to pretend to be that conduit, but just not be that conduit, or just so that it drips for everyone else. Like there's some window dressing that takes place, but there's no real strategic commitment to the area that they represent, whether it be a municipality, whether it be a bowling alley, whether it be a city or a state or a country or a company, a global one too. You can see all these different types of people in responsible positions not being responsible for their constituents. But that's just a basic disconnect that a narcissist will have, is they don't look, they're making so much money, people are whispering things in their ears, they've been boosted up to stratospheric levels. Why are they going to believe you when they say that you wrecked the country? Like, there might be two different opinions. You could stand up in a room and say, who says she wrecked the country? 20 people just won't blame her because they can't bring themselves to doing that. 80% are right. But what does it matter? It's like, this is the person who drilled the hole in the boat that we all sank on. That's not enough. Like, it is important to point the finger and to diagnose a problem and to have causality and cause and effect. Like, yeah, this is the person in the responsible position. This is the fire chief. And this was the fire. Somebody's garage burned down and they didn't show up and put it out. When they came in on a platform saying that they were going to be the most vigilant or more vigilant than the other people, that did the same thing before them with a different looking outfit, different looking people, a different type of pitter patter. So yeah, if you have defunct political systems, you're going to have defunct leadership, and self-enrichment on their side is apparently a part of their decision matrix. If they get something, it's good. Whoever gets screwed, well, that just means they were weak, right? They were lame. See, I'm not lame, they're lame. And yet, if you look at what they did to win, isn't that cheating to win? Isn't that an illicit activity? And then, so how's that relationship going to evolve over time if that's how they start out? Now, okay, a free press is something that can identify people like that, and it's terrible when it happens, but what if it's happening on a regular basis because the institutions are wacky? Got very comfortable people with very comfortable tenured, explaining every concern that a normal populace would have away with some type of sociological gibberish. Oh, this will work out, that'll work out. We got this to do this. And then you got an information sphere that's plugging into that defunct sociology and the defunct experts. That are downplaying the severity of the issue. Look, I don't care what country you are, I don't care the conditions. It could be Madagascar, a dispute between Madagascar and South Africa. Right? If Madagascar sent a battalion or a brigade plus 2 battalions in the middle of the night and landed on the beach somewhere in South Africa, that is a state level action, which is an act of war. Now, how you describe that, like if your information sphere describes that away or puts it in different terms, we've got the Red Cross pre-positioned to treat it like a humanitarian crisis when it has nothing to do with that. Then you're talking about a combination of things that aren't working. Like, we're already talking about 3 institutions. Then no military response, 4 institutions. No police response, which is counterintuitive, like they're smuggling them in or somehow working with the problem. What problem? No, there's only one problem to work with, is getting those people out. But see, they're doing it out of their country into Europe, so they're keeping themselves somewhat congruent that they're just dealing with a problem. But in fact, the problem itself is an act of war. So if they don't address it and they put that element, that brigade plus 2 battalion element on the border of their neighbor, then they're committing an act of war. So, but this whole process is not being seen in the clear lens that it should be, because you have a European body that's pretending to legislate the legislation about this because there's some type of pressing economic need. When we're going into the 4th industrial revolution, we don't need major security concerns like this. It won't be going away. There's no place in the world where radical rat experiments like the one they're shilling for has ever worked ever anywhere in all time. So just keep that in mind. Like, they might have some ways of throwing you emotionally off balance to keep you from realizing that fact, but that's really true. They might try to find some particular instances to undermine that argument, but if there are any instances of it, like, I don't know, they came up with this early. Like, there was a Fiji, like an island somewhere, where the women ran everything and it was a paradise, and it turned out to just be a total lie, like an anthropological fabrication. But you can see with that type of idealism, which is indeed a deception, it's an idealized world that leads to uh, a disaster instead. That's not good. And the fact that people can be suckered with it because they're dreaming big, that's not good either. That's delusion. So delusion leading to disaster, which also leads to anger, right? Ill will, hate, all of that. So it's like a double defilement. And then, of course, what is facilitating that? Well, it's the greed of the operators that are making money off of a massive criminal enterprise. So then you have the trifecta: greed, ill will, and delusion to extreme degrees, like stratospheric degrees, in a warlike effort to destroy. That's not how you build good times. It's not how you build good associations. That's not how you build good futures. That's how you build bad futures. See, the future's coming anyway. It can be good, it can be bad, but there's causality to the two. So not having adequate border security or a naval blockade and a mechanism for treating the security breach is bad. That causality of that negligence is bad, will be bad. It's just foreseeable, and that's why it's not desirable. But see, again, we're not talking about desirable. We're talking about good values, right effort that lead to right outcomes. That reduces the possibility for mass violence and poverty by not allowing the preconditions to set foot, and if they do set foot, to remove whatever is keeping those conditions there, gradually or as quickly as one can, because it's not a trivial thing to let things like that fester. And it should be considered in terms of public health. You have a ghetto, a place where there's people that are living on less than $2 a day. That's a security risk. So why is that happening? Who has some understanding of governance? Because they're doing it wrong. So wherever you have a lot of those places, just think geopolitical actors put that into play, like cancer, to weaken, again, who they see as a competitor. That's it. Don't put any extras on it. That's it. So, but just because you have cancer doesn't mean you'll die of it. There's different types of treatments. One of them is chemotherapy. Right? Sounds terrible, you feel sick, but the stuff goes away, and people live miraculous, gigantic, awesome lives because they take the right action the right way once they've diagnosed the problem. So that's miraculous. Then there's all different other types of things going on now. Nanotechnology, who knows how well we are now in the biological spheres. Why can't we apply that to the social spheres as well? And get rid of the astroturf and get rid of the hostile programming, the hostile sociology that's been imposed on us by people of ill will using idealistic Blarneyism to disguise their if not nefarious, then certainly ill-devised plans that will not work long term, see. But if you have someone who's just thinking in terms of their lives, they're in on a cushy tenure, no matter what they have to say. They don't feel responsibility for those that come after them. There are people like that. They don't feel, but they pretend that they do. And this gives them sort of a leg up in some strange way, but at what cost? For them, it's enough money for them. The cost is abstract in their mind. They abstract it away, even if it is as disastrous as letting your country and the neighbors be invaded by a foreign hostile force. Just think about that. A whole lot of things happen on the face of this earth. Why would something like that be considered impossible? And yet, again, just like you can have an outbreak of a rash, you can apply medicine to it and you can heal it. Even if your foot is shattered by an artillery shell, you can saw through the jagged bone and you can file off the sharp edges and you can re-sew the skin over the bone with a drainage tube to allow pus and what would otherwise infect the wound to seep out. At which point you remove the tube and then it's just that small area that needs to heal. And with the application of the right hygienic hygienic procedures, including sterilizing the wound at certain intervals, you can live another day. Now, what can you do with that foot? Well, in the old days, they got a piece of wood, maybe, or something else. They were very inventive. But today we have even better technology so that you could almost be like a bionic man, right? It's an improvement. Or not an improvement, but just let's put it this way. Your foot is replaced by one that, the Porsche of foots, and it works really well. You will never, ever, ever have to worry about something some heavy object causing you pain by falling on your toes. Even if you break that Porsche-like device, even if it is handmade, and does or doesn't cost nothing, that's an advantage. That is just one thing that you have that has some downsides, but it also has some upsides. And that's the way you need to think about the journey of your life, is that you can have certain things, you can lose certain things, and you can get certain things back. But again, getting all the time means also getting problems. Because there's a bridge of aversion. There is something about agitatory propaganda that does get people focused on it, because essentially we are a form of wild animal in a way. We have eyes, we have ears. Certain sounds make us react. And we also have conditioning. With a dog, you have a dog that's well trained. You can have a human that's well trained. But humans are more complex. It's not just behavioral, it's also how they think. What they think about, why. And if they're engaged with aversionary things, which are very easy to fall victim to because they're annoying, they're frustrating, right? They give you that little charge of energy, which is like a kickback of, it's not dopamine, it's like, well, again, adrenaline. And there is this term, adrenaline junkie. I advise against it. It's putting you in a potentially dangerous situation. Now, okay, controlled, dangerous situation is something that some people do, whether I say they should do it or not. But I'm just saying it's something to reflect on. Why are you an adrenaline junkie? And is being a junkie a good thing or a bad thing? If you're dependent on aversion or anger to feel like your day is not as boring as it otherwise would be, that's not a good place to be. That's not skillful. And it adds up over time, and I can tell you it doesn't lead to good places. It leads to bad places because it's a bad thing. It's a defilement. Anger is a defilement. I rail about greed all the time, and you can see that in narcissists, which are also deluded people, right? They have a lot of delusion, a lot of self plus delusion. So what is the remedy for that? No self. Deconstruct it. Get in the habit of doing it, building it back, but doing it skillfully. And not accepting conditioned labels. You're this. Because everyone in the world says you're the most amazing poet they've ever heard. Does not make you a poet. If you do not have a self. And you don't accept labels of self as definitive. Because they're not. And then another crowd says, no, he's not a poet, he's a prophet. The other shout, no, he's a king. No, he's a villain. You see, you can't let the crowd define self either. You see it as for the stupidity as it is when the crowd does it, but why do you do it to yourself? How do you think that your crowd psychology, crowded psychology might have attributed some label to you, which is ultimately not self-defeating, it's self-making. And making self, it makes you impenetrable to all the things that could possibly shape you in one way or another, manipulate you one way or another. Oh, I'm known to be a greedy person, or I'm known to be someone who will say anything to get my way. So of course I got to continue in this unskillful path. What? No. Judge the self based on the skillfulness. And if the self is not skillful, let it go. It's not you, it's not yours. It isn't. It never was. Really. It was just your belief that it was. And the problem with skillful right view is that it will appear counterintuitive if you're invested in a self that is unskillful. And you'll have to question, like, it's like building a sandcastle. Like, you build your little crummy sandcastle, but then you get a book and it shows like the best sandcastles ever built, and then like how they build it, and it's a really simple technique. And then you look at your sandcastle. Now, if you kick it over, it really doesn't matter. Build then back a better sandcastle. Or build into the sandcastle itself that it doesn't need to remain the same way. You could kick it one in the morning, rebuild it in the afternoon, kick it again, build another one the next morning in a completely different way. And it has about the same significance, because just like there's nothing holding together a sandcastle, there's really nothing holding together a self, except our hardened belief in the wrong view that it is an immovable, permanent thing. So if you're taught that and you believe that, and then you finally hear the phrase "no self," that's going to take some time to penetrate. It's going to have to seep in for a while to break up the conditionality of the perspective that you have, the cognition that you have, the causality that you have within the dynamics of cognition itself, which is a stream, a pure stream of pure life, until it's no longer there, and then it isn't, and neither are you. As for the normalcy part of politics, it's normal to have good people be politicians. So within nation states, the situation that we're experiencing or have experienced hasn't been ideal. And yet there's been some wins and there's been some losses. Never paint the past with just a black brush. There's always good things happening and bad things happening at the same time. And so the purpose that you have is to do the good thing in your capacity for as long as you can. Because it's good, it's going to lead to good outcomes. That's what spiritual resilience is about. So resilient politics means pushing forward with a normalcy. We want normalcy. We want normal people, trusting people, people that do what they say. That means they say things that are good and reasonable, and then they follow up on those things. And that's all normal. That's considered normalcy. A return to normalcy from abnormalcy. And we have to also build in a lot of forgiveness for ourselves. We are not the all-knowing creatures. You know, when you take out a boat on what appears to be a placid sea, despite even what we have today, which is modern meteorological equipment, which really is amazing, I must say, you can still get hit by a fluke storm. Of course you can. And I think we need to just look at Western civilization as a whole and say we got hit by a bunch of fluke storms, but also some storms that weren't as fluky as some people might want to portray them to be. Which, as horrifying as that might be, also means that we can remedy the situation pretty quick, because we thought we were going into a placid sea, and in fact we're hitting a hurricane. So that means battening down the hatches. That means saving whatever can be saved, and not all of it is going to be saved type of mode. Battening down the hatches is a great thing. It's also appropriate, right effort in a storm. It's not to continue with tranquility. If you're not in a tranquil place, it's not right effort to be tranquil unless you can be tranquil, and it doesn't detract from right effort. On the other hand, right effort might be, hey, I got to slow things down. I got way too much on my plate right now. Doing too many things. I want too many things. I got too many cravings, desires, resentments, grudges, self-accusations, you name it. You got to get through those first. It really does suck. It's like, I got measles. Uh-oh. What do now? Well, you can't just run around when you got measles. Also, you're not helping other people by doing that. You got to cure yourself first, at least so you can walk. And then maybe, guess what? Maybe you have a disability. You used to be able to throw boulders, and now you can't because you got a cane. And so you're in cane mode. Your whole right effort should be developing cane style. And cane style is an old style. Cane style has a lot of different aspects to it that you never would have learned if the causality of your life did not lead you to such a fabulous condition. So it's not about wanting to live a perfect life, which is a source of unending disappointment for some people. It's about living within appropriate parameters of the out of controlness of the environment that you're living in, and looking to reduce the out of controlness of it, and not looking to find more out of controlness for the reasons of adrenaline. Because, see, that's a craving as well. So, see, you're constantly being pulled into directions that are unskillful. So, getting yourself into a skillful state repetitively, that might be what you need to do first before you can move forward, even if you don't want that to be true. Nobody wants measles. Nobody wants yellow fever. Nobody wants a bout of different things. Nobody wants a toothache. But it's really ridiculous to... Now, a toothache, you might say, all right, it is smart for me to ignore this because I have no other right option. Maybe that's true. Maybe it isn't. Maybe you have a better option. But maybe before that better option happens, you can still engage in other practices to reduce the pain or the panic or the alarm or the disappointment or the frustration that you're feeling. So that becomes a right practice even in varying conditions, but it's something that's there all the time. That's why it's skillful. Like, I wear my tool belt, and it's a magical one. It's invisible, but it's always there. And it covers my whole body. It's like one of those suits you can zip. So it's got pockets everywhere. And it doesn't weigh anything. It's light as a feather. And every time something comes at me, I got a specialized tool for the job. Not too specialized, but it just works very well. And whatever issue there is now, sometimes it does take work. It's not, poof and it's done for some things. But if you've got an ice hook, or what do they call them? You got one of those alpine ice picks, and you're on a glacier, and you're, let's say, above average skilled in using it, including strategically going where the places are passable and doable and not going straight up just because you have one of those things. You don't need to put yourself to extreme tests because you're not going to the wrong places, but in the places that you do go through, and sometimes they're unavoidable. A lot of times they come out of nowhere. You got the best alpine, most modern ice pick out there, and you're trained really, really, really well with it. So what other Paduginas wouldn't be able to get through, you can. You don't slide back. even if it's just inching forward at some parts because you need to go by inches, you do that. You're not screaming at the glacier. Why is it that you're forcing me to do this? No, this is what it is right here, right now. This is how the Great Glacier is laying. This is my ice pick. This is my body weight. This is how I'm gonna wedge my feet between this cavern, and this is how I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna inch forward. Or you know what? I might just stop and take a rest, look at the view. I don't need to be going the whole time. If I get there in 2 hours, don't matter. Get there in 2 days, don't matter. Get there in 2 years, don't matter. I'm not falling down the mountain. I'm not going to just let go of skill. And if I do let go, it might just be that's the last straw. But they've been known to find climbers. They're still holding on to their picks even when they're frozen solid. So. Coming back again to normalcy. See, I go off on these expeditions, but what I'm trying to convey to the good people of this good earth who are in good numbers, if not the absolute majority, I make my recommendation, my diagnosis. Let's return to normalcy. There's nothing radical about normalcy. But we're so now far below normalcy, it seems like this would be some type of titanic effort. But I think the most simplest way of putting it is putting good people in good places and having a lot of good protection so that good things can happen without bad things taking them out. And you can apply those principles to really any field. So it's called the good principles. So we're returning to normalcy. We're not returning to radicalism. We're leaving radicalism behind. We're getting back to good times with good conditions. That's where we're going. So if anyone says that's not the case, they should make their case. We don't need to make our case, and they need to make their case. But see, the cases they're making are shot through holes. So they're pretty transparent frauds if you know how they're operating in this day and age. Now, it did seem like this was the process of work for years now, but the problem with that is the conditions keep getting bad. And they're being leveraged by bad actors who you could also say have just economically captured certain networks. So they're doing their dirty work for them, which is an economic situation that hasn't been unknown to happen in the history of the planet. It's happened in different places at different times. It's just we're apparently awestruck that it can happen in places we thought were off limits to multipolar adversaries. But that was a bad assumption to have. So they can get to us, they have gotten to us, they are causing a lot of havoc. But they have methods that are not impervious to scrutiny. And once you scrutinize them, you see the effects, the downstream effects are bad for most people. Then just get a sense of how precarious these people are positioned in their rocketed precipices. How much logistics do they really have? But again, why underestimate that? Why not overestimate that if state actors are involved? So, but you see, that just simplifies the problem. People say, oh, that's an overwhelming problem. Actually, not. That's pretty understandable. And then once you see that, well, what do you do then? What is the appropriate right action? And in this game of life, people can win in the beginning, but then lose in the middle and also lose in the end. So that's the type of longer term strategy someone should have if they're feeling a little bit demoralized or despondent or felt like they had to give up because they had no other choice. What you need to do is reconsider the choices you've made, and in the light of the deteriorating situation and conditions, and realize it's not your fault that this is all happening, that people made these decisions for themselves, which could prove fatal to us if we do not start the treatment program. Right? I didn't think I had cancer. They got the x-ray back. Oh dear, there's cancer all over the place. Well, what does that mean? That means starting the treatments. And there isn't a guarantee that there's not a 100% chance you're going to survive. It's just not. It's never that way. But for the people who say, no, I'm not going to take the medicine because I'm too scared or I don't think it can work, that's the wrong position to have, because we're not just talking about a human body, we're talking about a national body. The national body can survive centuries. So it can have a really bad time, but it can also recover. And then 200 years later, it's still kicking. How many times do people think the United States was just going to go away? Let me tell you, it was a bunch of times. But it didn't happen. And the people that were aligned against us, they were big players, the biggest at the time in the places they were. The British Empire, #1, bigger, way bigger than Rome. Naval power, military power, everything, financial power. Also social power. You had all the royalists, right? People that were on the side of the king. Now, this is an old dispute. I'm not going to say it was right or wrong in that case. In a lot of cases, see, the British, they'll just say, well, now you're doomed. You know, you shouldn't have messed with us. You're the reason why it all fell apart. They'll just blame us. But it's not true. And ultimately, both countries learned to work together in a lot of ways. And there really was no reason for enmity between the peoples, because it was collections of elites at the time that were the problem and not the people themselves. And that's the same thing with the Eastern Europeans in the east or west of the Urals. There's nothing inherently wrong with them, but their current leadership does seem to have taken a rather counterproductive path. But if they were to change, wouldn't situations change really quick? So it is an east-west problem. So changing out east, changing out west, changing them all out, and returning to normalcy, I really do look forward to that day. But don't ever think what we're doing is radical. Doing the good thing isn't radical. Doing the good thing should be normal. Now, when I come back and say used car salesman, I keep saying that, I'm basing that on that. Look, guys who sell used cars, a lot of them are not this stereotype at all. Like, they know that the car has been used, and they're very transparent with what is broken, what could possibly blow out on you later, what's good about the vehicle, but it's a mixed bag, right? You know going into a used car lot, but of course he's going to try to sell you. He invested. Why wouldn't he try to sell you? He's going to highlight, most likely, the better points. Maybe it's a price point. You know what? Yeah, it's sort of junky, but it's affordable, so why don't you take it? That's okay. That's a very useful a service as well. And it isn't an easy job. And so, in no way in the world do I want to affiliate that type of honorable, useful profession to political operators and white monkeys, who again are like some type of marketers. So they go up to the level of, I'm not, trying to provide the service of this card to this person. I'm selling ideas. Bad ideas, bad sociology. Also, how about the idea of credibility? I'm a credible person. I'm a credible person. Why am I a credible person? Well, I'm perfectly shaved. I'm buff. My haircut's correct. I know how to look into a camera. I've got I'm very quick with my mouth, very quick-witted. Just a real slick operator. It's got an explanation for anything. Why this isn't working, why that isn't working, why that didn't work, why did you say this, but then you did that. They got an explanation for everything. And again, you can get them in, and then it's only over time that they show themselves to be imposters. Now, our culture is now so bad that we assume they're imposters going in, and oftentimes we're correct because we're looking for it. But sometimes we might see it when it's not there. And because we have malign sociologists, they have these people that are looking for leaders and then trying to attribute poisonous qualities to them. Well, look, we're going to poison pill this person because they have a different opinion on these topics. So they're a terrible person despite them being, qualified for the job. Like a expert crane operator that might smoke in the cabin now and again because he's a smoker, but he gets the job done 99.9% of the time. That dude you're going to poison pill as a bad, not qualified, but the just right off the lot that has a nice haircut and his uniform is crisp and his mouth is real slick. That's the person you're going to put up there. And every time there's something going wrong, you ask him and he has a slick explanation. Doesn't improve. That's the white monkey that they have sent amongst us, and there's good ones. They're not as easy to spot. They're really into being patriotic. They'll put a little pin on themselves, like, here I am, look, American flag pin. You know who did this? Lyndon B. Johnson. He had a fake silver star pin. He walked around with that. You should look that up. That is not a lie. He flew some airplanes far from the action in the Pacific, and he had some strings pulled and got himself awarded the Silver Star retroactively. And the people who were with him in the airplane, they didn't get one because they weren't Lyndon B. Johnson. So this type of personality type, just take him as a model. They also suspect he was criminally affiliated with both the assassination of JFK and his brother Robert, who hated his guts. See, he was the big Republican. He wanted to be president. He didn't want to be Trump by a young upstart that was more popular and probably had more qualifications, especially in the values department. They said when old Johnson died, he was almost a billionaire. But I guess in those dollars, he would be certainly a billionaire in our time. Now, isn't that odd for a president to be a billionaire? That's open admission of having non-reciprocating values, which are the most important values to have in a politician. This is someone, I said the sprinkler head, but it shouldn't. It should not only have multiple ducts on it, so it's really convenient. You can add like more hoses to it. It's like a multi-jack hose. It's a spout multiplier. But it's also that it's not clogged and jammed up. See, and also that it's not siphoning. Imagine there's like 10 hoses, But there's that little black lever on 9, and then the one hose that's running all the time is running right around into the dude's garden. Not just him, of course, the shells that he's put up. Like if you look into it a little bit deeper, you'll see, oh, it's a Potemkin village of nonsense. And right there, you can see there's accountants involved in that, lawyers involved in that. So hit all of them too. As far as, with the book, because they're part of it. Yeah, you can't pull something off like that without something like that. But I'm not saying Johnson did that. Johnson was even slicker than that. He just did it all through his investments. So this is also one of the slick ones to it. Now there's apparently they have to report and account for that now, but there was many years that they weren't doing that, and the ones that did provide that evidence, all of that is a gold mine for making sweeps. Anybody playing in that game right there is a pretty good indication. And again, the richer they are, the more it incriminates them. Anyone with a political office that didn't go in with the money, but comes out with more, that is their crime. Now, of course, it might not be directly attributable to them, but if you find out they're associated with the network where that is the case, that is the level of crime you're talking about. That is the take. That's how much they've robbed from the American people. In terms of monetary remuneration for irrecoverable cultural achievements that money wasn't worth. Right? Irrecoverable decades of doom and despair in places like the Rust Belt. So, but we can't go back in time and dig up those people, but maybe we can. Now that we have the technology, we can. But certainly the people involved in it now need to be retired as quickly as possible. Hopefully they'll just get the memo that we're entering a new phase of competition, so we got to take the lead weights off of our pants. We have to take the cinder blocks off of our shoulders, and we have to take the IV off and stop donating blood to all these vampires, because we have a life or death struggle in front of us, and it's all around. It's multipolar. So we got the Arctic down to the Arctic down to Antarctica to deal with right now. Then you got space above that. So, and then people being spacey with spacey stuff and all those spacey explanations and things like that don't look all that credible in the grand scheme of things, but might have like a chummy type of way of doing it that suggests massive public relations that also these people, they might be clearing millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to be convincing, to be create a publicly likable profile. So who are these companies? Who are the people? Who are their paymasters? What do the contracts look like and all that? Like, will they be forthcoming with that, or is it coming from someplace else? Is it indeed coming from overseas, or what are the shells or the divisions within the shells that are placed around the world to make things look like an information sphere, like a RT outfit type, but it's just national? Like I said, 20% compromise isn't real easy to spot unless you're paying attention, but it's still there. Could we have something like that in an open and free, ostensibly open and free system that they despise? That they would do anything to disrupt and degrade and destroy? They're really hoping not to have to hit the nuke button, because, that's a last resort for them. And don't deter yourself, because they know they're going to get blown up too. Don't think their missiles are going to hit. They're not where they think they will. But the West missiles will hit them. It's going to be like within 1 meter circumference. So they're not going to go that far, but if they can penetrate, if there's a security breach, multiple security breaches in politically responsible positions, socially responsible, financially responsible, then that's what you're dealing with. Even if you don't have a military confrontation going on at the moment directly, you have these other confrontations going on. So why not classify that as just part of the combined effort? So is that happening? Well, our minders would tell us, our explainers would say it's not happening. They got some explanations for why things are as looking as screwy as they are. But see, their explanations are screwy. Their method is screwy. Their format is screwy. Their organization is screwy. Their management is screwy, and their owners are screwy. So it's like that. It's not you that's screwy. Seeing it that way, otherwise you're a bad person type of seeing it. That's their cultural program. So, and it does feed into a lack of logistics. When that fuel truck crisis, or fuel shortage in the UK a couple of months ago, that's how it works. We have very complex systems. Just one piece doesn't fit, it doesn't work. So they're looking for the weakest parts on the chain. But of course, if they can get the head, if they can take out the political process, boy, that's like fighting an enemy that has both of their legs tied. Just going to be a day late and $1 short. That is their method, and explanations why that is. Until people get fed up enough that they go to a replacement that does the same thing, because they're on both sides of the aisle. Because it's a totalitarian, that's the definition of it. So yeah, bad starting point, I understand, but a starting point it is. And just because it's a starting point, don't mean things can't get worse. When the electricity goes out in your area, that's what worse looks like. And it might not be coming back on, because you got a bunch of other things going on too. But that's just the way it is. I mean, think the people in Ukraine, that's the way they're living now. You think that's science fiction? It's reality. Now, some people are still thinking, it's going to go this way or that way. They at least know they're in a fight. The rest of the West is still asleep, still in a coma. It's maybe like 5% awake. The people that or deal specifically with security matters, those people are awake. The 95% still asleep, watching sports, mowing the lawn and doing all that stuff. No idea. Because their information networks don't want to alarm them unnecessarily, because things are just going so well for them and their contracts. And if we can present it in this way, why should we care? People don't need to believe us. They can change the channel. Like, these people have explanations. They got reasons. But we don't have reasons to go along with it. We don't. Not short term, not long term. We never did. So seeing things now in a more correct frame and in a more correct way, and then realizing that there are super slick operators in the game, and at this point they will go into a textbook. But if that textbook will be written or not, we don't know. But certainly, again, Whitehall, that's a big place to just look at indiscriminately. And then, DC, the upper echelons of Republicans, and Not now again. I'm not going on the anti-Trump train, but certainly there's bad actors on both sides of the aisles there, and they got different profiles, different backgrounds. But there's stuff that links them together. I'm pretty sure. If nothing else, then their horrible talking points and their inability to produce results in critical areas, despite somehow materializing in those positions with a big mouth and quick hands. So, look, the year 65 AD was challenging. Just imagine everything that was happening in Italy at that time. So the fight is not lost. It's gonna continue until this planet stops spinning. Although it'll probably keep spinning whether or not there's life on it or not. It's at some point that's what the future holds. But until then, let's not work towards bad times. Let's work towards good times instead. And let's not think of it as work. This is the way good is.